Welcome back. It's time for lesson number 3. And as you can see here, this lesson deals with upgrades and updates. Now let's take a look at this page. As usual, this is the learner objectives page. And here you can see that what we're going to be doing over the next few minutes is we're going to be talking about how to upgrade a vSAN cluster. We're going to talk about best practices. We're going to also talk about, notice, how to evaluate supported upgrade paths and disk formats. And then finally, we're going to talk about upgrade recommendations. So, let's take a look at this page. In this page, we're talking about upgrading your entire cluster. So, at the very top, they tell you that the vSAN upgrade process includes several stages. Think about it. On one hand, we're going to have to upgrade the vCenter server. We're also going to have to upgrade all of the ESXi hosts. If you want also, you could upgrade your distributed virtual switches. You could also upgrade VMware tools, virtual machine hardware. But besides that, potentially you have to also upgrade the disk format version of every single one of the drives. Now, when you take a look, here it says, depending on the vSAN and disk format versions that you're running, an object and disk format conversion might be required. And if that's the case, that could take a long while. Now, when you look at this page, here again, they're talking about best practices. So let's take a look at these. Number 1, you want to spend time planning the upgrade. You want to make sure you read the release notes. Learn about potential gotchas. Number 2, back up your data. Doesn't matter what RAID level you use, what FTP policy you use, back up your data. Then remember, you start by upgrading the vCenter server. And then through Lifecycle Manager, or in previous versions, Update Manager, you upgrade your ESXi hosts. Then you make sure everything looks healthy. And then after you make sure everything looks healthy, you realize, of course, at that point whether or not you need to upgrade your disk format version. Once that completes, you want to make sure everything looks clean. So once again, you want to go to Skyline Health and make sure that everything is showing as great. Now let's take a look at this page. In this page, remember, you have to read the release notes. It's critical because you never know what, of course, to expect if you've never done it before. Number 2, you need to make sure that your hardware is still going to be supported if you upgrade to the next version. So you may want to look at the interoperability matrix. If you look at the bottom, remember, you want to make sure that in the hardware compatibility list, your servers are still supported in that version. But it's not just the servers. What about the controllers? What about your disks? What about your firmware? All those things are things to consider. And if you take a look, we've mentioned that again, you always start by upgrading vSphere first. We start by upgrading the vCenter server. Remember, if you download the latest version of the vCenter server, if you open up the ISO image, there is a script that allows you to deploy a brand new vCenter. It allows you to upgrade the vCenter. It also lets you restore the vCenter if you ever backed it up using port 5480. And it also lets you migrate from the Windows to the Linux appliance. Once you do that, then remember, you move on to the ESXi host, and eventually, the last thing you do is you take a look and see whether or not you have to upgrade your disk format versions, whether or not you have to do a DFC, a disk format conversion. Now, when you look at this table, basically this gives you an idea of how you could go from one version to the other, what is compatible and what is not. Now, I'm not going to read this, but again, for example, if you have 6.7, there's no problem upgrading from 6.7 to 7.0 update 1. So take a look at this table And obviously you can see that you could always do an upgrade assuming that you have something fairly recent. Now, when we look at this page, notice again here it says the disk format upgrade is optional. I would say not really. I mean, yes, you can live without upgrading that. But again, typically you want to have the latest and greatest. I want you to notice the last statement in this page. Notice it says, after you upgrade the on-disk format, you cannot roll back. So again, there is no way if you change your mind to go back to a previous version. Just remember that. And when you take a look, once again, you want to make sure you do the upgrade while everything is healthy. So, bullet number 1, make sure you do this when all the hosts are up and running. You don't want to do this when one host is in maintenance mode or in the middle of a crisis. Let's say one host crashed. You want to make sure everybody has the same software version. You want to make sure all the disks and disk groups are healthy. And again, you want to make sure you don't have any broken or inaccessible objects. Now, when you take a look at this page, here, you can see that it's very easy with the vSphere client to realize what version your disks happen to currently have. And again, remember, you have different version numbers for different versions of vSphere in most cases. When you take a look, using the vSphere client, you can use Skyline Health. And again, Skyline Health also has the ability to make recommendations. So when you take a look at this page, look at the left side, it says vSAN build recommendations include patch and applicable driver updates. Notice it says to update the firmware on vSAN 7.0 clusters, you must use an image with Lifecycle Manager. And if you take a look, remember, historically, we used to use baselines. A baseline is a fancy term to specify that you want to pick and install one or more than one patch. So when you take a look, here it says vSAN build recommendations are provided through vSAN system baselines. So if you take a look, I could, or actually, you know what? I would suggest that you actually take a look at Lifecycle Manager. Go to the home page, click on the icon for Lifecycle Manager, and then again, you're going to see the vSAN baseline, which again gives you an idea of the things that could be upgraded. Now, when you take a look, this concludes this particular module. So if you think about it, this module had 3 lessons. We did a series of demos, and you had a couple of labs. Hopefully you enjoy it. I'll see you in the next chapter. Thank you, guys.